Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Welcome to Ordinary Time, or the season after Pentecost, or the green season that I think is a season for growing in discipleship. As you know, it goes from Trinity Sunday to Christ the King Sunday, which means months and months and months of green season. And we've left the seasons of Christmas and Easter and Pentecost, all the big celebrations, and now we're settling into this season of learning and following Jesus in our day-to-day life. And sometimes that's a little hard to do, to just follow Jesus in our day-to-day life. But this is what we're invited to do. And I love that 3 of these stories that we hear today are different ways of looking at what's going on in this world and in our lives. So let me give you a little bit of the backstory behind Ahab, Jezebel, and Elijah. Now, Ahab was an Israelite king. However, he married the beautiful and ruthless Jezebel, who believed in Baal and Asherah, and Ahab turned away from the God of Yahweh to her gods. Not a good sign. Elijah had warned him and said, not a good idea. And yet he did it, and so God, Yahweh, said, Elijah, call a drought. And so there was a drought in the land, and with a drought, then you lose your crops, you can no longer feed your horses, and your army that is going out to do away with all the Israelites becomes grounded. And so Ahab got angrier, Jezebel got angrier, and Elijah decided, after the prophets of Yahweh were being cut down by the prophets of Baal and by Jezebel, he called for a showdown. And they had a standoff and a little contest, and it would make a great movie, but we're not going to see it today. But it's this battle of good and evil. And so he says to the prophets of Baal, call down, make your God shine down fire. And they all day long and all night long danced and sang and begged, and nothing happened. And Elijah called down, and the fire consumed everything. And yet those prophets didn't believe, and they were wiped out. And so Jezebel heard about this, that her prophets were wiped out, and so she was thirsting for the blood of Elijah. And like most human beings, he's like, this is a good time to get out of town. Although that's not what Yahweh had asked him to do. He's like, So he left his friends, ran into the wilderness, went to a solitary broom tree, it says, and said, just let me die. Just kill me now. And lay down and fell asleep. And an angel of the Lord woke him up, fed him, gave him water, and he fell asleep again. And the second time the angel of the Lord came to him, fed him, gave him water, and said, you've got some work to do. And so what did he do? He went on a 40-day journey where he fasted for 40 days, 40 nights, went to the Mount of God, the Mount of Horeb, as far away from where Yahweh had called him as possible. And so he slept in the cave, and in the morning, the voice of the Lord came to him and said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I've been zealous for you, but all your people have turned from you, and the prophets have all been killed, and I'm hiding. And the voice of the Lord said, I will come to you tomorrow. And so the voice of the Lord, Elijah goes and stands at the mouth of the cave, and there's a wind so strong that it breaks the mountains and breaks rocks. But the Lord is not in the wind. And then comes earthquakes, and the Lord was not in the earthquakes. And then comes fire, all the most powerful elements. And the Lord was not in the fire. And then it says there was the sound of sheer silence. And in that sound of sheer silence, the Lord once again said to Elijah, what are you doing here? And Elijah repeated, I've been zealous for you, but your people have turned away, your prophets have been killed, she's going to kill me. And the Lord said, go to Damascus. Go where I've called. And I think it's in those moments of silence where it's just me and God that I can hear the most clearly. Yes, I know we all pray fervently in times of need. Yes, I know we all give thanks and gratitude when things are going well. But just to sit in the sheer sound of silence to hear what God is doing in my life. I think we shy away from that. We're a little bit uncomfortable with sitting in silence and not having something to do or something to say or not knowing what's coming. But throughout the week, and I have no idea why, all the songs of Simon and Garfunkel kept coming to me. And I kind of like Bridge Over Troubled Water because that's what the world feels like. But the song that kept coming to me is Sound of Silence. And when I finally went and looked up the lyrics, the first verse is, hello darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping. And the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. I think of the seeds that were planted in Elijah as he slept, the seeds that were planted within Elijah as he was in the cave. And then I also love the last verse. It says, and the people bowed and prayed to the neon gods they made. And the sign flashed out its warning and the words that it was forming. Then the sign said, the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls and whispered in the sound of silence. I don't know if you spent a lot of time in subways where there's a lot of graffiti or in tenement halls, but there's a lot of truth written there. A lot of pain written there. A lot to witness in those places of despair. And we're invited to confront them, to acknowledge them, to see them. And then we go to the psalm today. And I love the psalm. It says, as the deer longs for the flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, O God. My thirst for God, for the living God. When shall I come and behold the face of God? And I think of those times in my life when I have been so incredibly thirsty, I would do just about anything for a sip of water. And imagine my soul thirsting for God in that same way. And sitting with that. Waiting with that. Holding that. Just that longing for God. No agenda, no questions. Thirsting for God. The gospel today is a story that's very familiar to us. And one of the things that really strikes me about it is Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee, and it's the story we hear today is right after Jesus stilling the storm. He goes, does this one thing, and then heads back. He heads into the territory of the Gentiles, people who have not heard the word of the Lord, people who don't know Yahweh. And Jesus lands, sees the man who is naked and literally out of his mind. The man kneels down. Jesus casts out the demons. The man does not ask for that. Jesus doesn't say, what do you need? And the demons say, please don't put us in the abyss, put us in the swine. Jesus says, okay, the swine go off. And the man is in his right mind. And I think about the conditions he's living under, a Gentile man, but under Roman occupation, the things that they have seen and experienced, the land they've lost, the industry they've lost, maybe the families they've lost. So distressed that he had a legion of demons. And I think of those times in my life when I am so distressed that my thoughts are so jumbled that I am not in my right mind, that I cannot sit quietly, that I cannot form thoughts, that I can't do anything other than just react. And Jesus coming into his presence, that's all it took. Went across the Sea of Galilee, cast out the demons, went back. And the man was clothed and in his right mind when the townspeople came to see what was happening. Jesus and the disciples get in the boat to go back, and he says, "Can I go with you?" And Jesus says, "No, stay here and tell what God has done for you." Possibly the first Gentile evangelist, who then goes, is in his right mind, and tells the people what God has done. In this long, long, long season of ordinary time, of growing in discipleship, I invite us, a congregation that's really good at praying together, praying when there is a time of need, and my God, there is a time of need in this world right now. And this congregation that is really good at giving thanks for the blessings in our life and recognizing it and acknowledging the blessings in our life, to do something different, to be with Jesus in this season of ordinary time, to sit silently and hear the stories of Jesus. Watch what Jesus is doing. Notice how Jesus is moving in your life. To sit with the love of God, sit in the stillness of his presence, and wait. Amen.